Okay, so yeah, if you do it. Okay. Yes, and let's you get it. Use another one. Yeah. What you doing? So Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kideshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner chanukah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שעשה ניסים אבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה. הנרות הללו אנו מדליקים, הנרות הללו אנו מדליקים על הניסים ועל הנפלאות ועל התשועות ועל הנחמות שעשית לאבותינו, שעשית לאבותינו בימים ההם, בימים ההם, בזמן הזה, על ידי כהניך הקדושים, וכל 8 ימי החנוכה, הנרות הללו קודש הם, ואין לנו רשות להשתמש בהם, אלא לראותם בלבד, כדי להודות לשמך הגדול, על ניסיך ועל נפלאותיך ועל ישועתך. מעצור ישועתי, לך נאה לשבח, תיקון בית תפילתי, ושם תודה נזבח, לקחי להדריה, יצר הנביה, אז אינו בשיר מזמור, חנוכת המזבח, אז אינו בשיר מזמור, חנוכת המזבח, יוונים נקבצו עלי, אזי בימי השמיים, ופרצו חומות מגדלי, וטימו כל השבנים, ומינות הקנקנים, נעשה נס לשושנים, בני בינה ימי 8, קבעו שיעור עננים, בני בינה ימי 8, קבעו שיעור עננים. Happy Hanukkah. Vera, may you have the merit of lighting many more candles, not just on Hanukkah, but always light the life of so many others around you. Amen. Now, if you take a seat, and now we're going, soon Rabbi Dweck is joining us, but beforehand, we have a special message from the Revivo Project. The Revivo Project are a special group in Israel who have modernized Mizrahi music. They're a fun bunch of lads, and they have managed to send us a special music in Hebrew, which essentially wishes us happy Hanukkah and all the best. So let me just share you the clip.
חג חנוכה שמח לקהילה היהודית שערי חיים, הקהילה הספרדית בדרום מנצ'סטר.
לרב אמיר עליטו וכל הקהילה.
מקווים שתעברו את התקופה הזו בשלום, הרבה בריאות, המגפה תעבור בבריאות ובשמחה. בואו ניתן להם איזשהו שיר ככה.
יאללה בשווי.
עוד יישמע בהרי יהודה ובחוצות ירושלים.
חג חנוכה שמח.
רק משמחות, רק בריאות. הפרויקט של רביבו.
ביי ביי.
Okay, so we have, that's one clip, and then we have the next one, which will give us in the right frame of mind for Chanukah. It's okay. It's a pleasure to be able to welcome Rabbi Dweck with us, and wishing Rabbi Dweck Chanukah Sameach, Happy Chanukah. And Rabbi Dweck's just finished having a conversation. He had another event on with the ambassador, and now he's able to share with us words of inspiration about Chanukah. Bechabel. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Amir. Chanukah Sameach to everyone. Rabbi Eli Tuv, good to see you. Thank you so much for the invitation. So good to see everyone. Chanukah Sameach. And I know that I've seen some of you this morning. I actually saw some of you this morning. So it's good to see you twice today. And I was asked by Rabbi Eli Tuv just to share some ideas around Chanukah. So here's what I thought to share with everyone tonight. There is a very interesting law in Hanukkah regarding the lighting of the candles of Hanukkah. So I'm going to tell you the law very briefly, and some thoughts around the meaning of that law. The Hachamim write in the Talmud that the obligation of the candle lighting is what they call ner ish ubeto, which means that is household obligation. So every individual in the household over bar and bat mitzvah equally are obligated, right, to light these candles. That means every woman and man are equally obligated. But there's a connection to the individual obligation, and that is that essentially the mitzvah can be carried out by a household. So what are the implications of that? What does that look like? So for example, three of my oldest children are now in Israel. Two of them made Aliyah, my son Ezra and my daughter Sarah, and my son Isaac is at yeshiva there at Ma'ale Adumim. So they, for all intents and purposes, still are what we consider samuch al shulchani. They're still relying on my table, right? They're still essentially supported by Margalit and me. And that means that they still remain legally part of my household. Now, what does that mean as far as the lighting of Hanukkah candles is concerned? It means that as long as we are lighting at home, they, as members of the household, have fulfilled their obligation with our lighting. And they do not need to light Hanukkah candles because we have fulfilled the obligation here, even though there's a time difference, right? Even though we're lighting later than the obligation begins for them, they're 2 hours ahead of us over here, they nonetheless fulfill their obligation. So much so that they, if they wanted to light, they could, but they could not say a beracha because it would be a beracha lebatala. The beracha would not be an obligatory beracha for them because we will have already done it or we will have been doing it for them and fulfilled their obligation. And just like you're not supposed to say a beracha on a mitzvah you've already done, they cannot do that. So it's a very interesting law. It manifests and opens up all different questions and interesting scenarios around it. What happens if the heads of household are not at the household and the kids are lighting and the parents are away on holiday, where does the household happen? Is it away on holiday? Is it home? There's questions of what constitutes being a member of the household. How much does one need to rely on that household, and so on and so forth. And, I mean, if you're of legal mind, you might want me to continue on that, but I'm not going to. I'm going to leave it there. And what I'm going to say now is drop into the philosophical underpinnings of that law, because all of our laws have philosophical underpinnings. Yeah, these are not just arbitrary legalities, although there are certainly, there are legalities that stem from the core. The question is, why is it a household mitzvah? What is that about? And there is an answer that I'd like to suggest, and from that draw some sense of meaning and inspiration around this very special holiday. The issue on Hanukkah is with a misconception, and that is that people believe that the issue around Hanukkah was one between the Jews and the Greeks. And while that is true, that we definitely had issues with the Greeks, the core problem was a familial problem. The core problem was an internal problem. There were rifts within the family. Why do I use the term family? Because, as I mentioned this morning in my talk, we are a familial nation. The nation of Israel essentially began as a family. It's Jacob, his children, and their descendants. And so ultimately, we are all one big family. And as people know in families, sometimes things don't always go well. We don't always see eye to eye with each other. If we weren't family, we might not care that we don't see eye to eye. But being that we are family, we happen to care a great deal that we don't see eye to eye. And we get into a whole bunch of, difficult situations as a result of it. And what happened with us nationally is that the family were not seeing eye to eye. There were members of our family that believed very strongly that there was no longer a value in remaining part of the family, that there was a greater value in leaving the family and embracing the nation of Greece. The reason for that was that Greece was extremely confusing to us. They had been speaking of things that we had spoken about. They were examining the meaning of life in the world in ways that we were examining the meaning of life in the world. We had never experienced another nation on earth that we had come into contact with that was doing such things, rivaling our own ideas in the way that we thought. They confused us a great deal. And they had sports and beauty pageants. So they definitely had some enticing aspects over and above what it was that we were doing. And it was easy to say, something, I think we finally found a reason to leave. And leave they did. Throngs of Jews were leaving. As a matter of fact, the Merriam-Webster dictionary says that Hellenist is uniquely Jewish. I mean, it means a person who embraced Greek culture and left their own, but that it was a uniquely Jewish phenomenon. And what that means is that there were conflicts within, that our nation was not seeing things eye to eye. And so when we ultimately ended up going to war with Greece, it was more a question of being able to reconcile the questions that were raised by our own family, for ourselves, with ourselves. And when we came to that, what we understood was members of our family that wanted to leave were actually raising a very important question. I mean, it's easy to point the finger and say, they shouldn't have left. But the reality is that they were raising a very serious question to all of us. One of those questions was, what do you do when you see a nation that presents to you meaningful, substantive ideas, that is relating to reality in ways that no one has before, that is presenting to you issues that should be examined, questioned, and in certain cases, embraced? It was not sufficient for us to simply say, hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. It was not sufficient for us to simply say, we are us and they are them, and let them be them and let us be us. That wasn't working, because they were presenting some very important points to us if we are realistic and true, we will be able to clearly say that the Greeks raised issues that are still pertinent and still addressed by us up till this day as being relevant and cutting edge. And what we learned was, although we had to go to war, we understood that when we experience other nations that present valuable ideas to us, we are to learn them, we are to embrace them, but we are not to sacrifice our own identity because of them. There is a difference between assimilating and assimilating. And those of you who recognize that word will know that there are two meanings to that word. One meaning of assimilate is to bring into oneself ideas and different aspects and incorporate them into one's own being. One assimilates ideas. One assimilates culture. But in doing so, one does not dissipate one's own identity. One enhances oneself by including nuance and variant aspects into oneself. And that is something that we do, and we are expected to do. The other meaning of assimilate is to allow oneself to dissipate into external society, to allow one's identity to dissolve into society. That is something we do not do. And while that was happening around the time of Hanukkah, the second sense of assimilate, what we had to fight for was to stop it. And then we really had to address, well, now what do? We have to do the first level of assimilation and incorporate the valuable ideas into our people. And so we did. I mentioned this morning, I think I did, one of the astonishing laws that come out of this is that the Hachamim have ruled, Harambam, another very interesting halakha. You can write a Sefer Torah in Greek, and it's kosher. And I don't mean Greek letters, I mean the Greek language. It is permitted to write an entire Sefer Torah in the Greek language, and it's kosher. Harambam posek like that. He just says, look, today we don't do it because Greek is not what it used to be. There's been a lot of adulteration of the language. But that meant that we understood that there was valuable aspects to Greek thought that we needed to incorporate and learn. So how does one assimilate in the first way rather than in the second way? How does one incorporate ideas into their own being without sacrificing their own identity and integrity? The answer is a simple one, but a difficult one to implement, and it requires a great deal of dedication and focus, and that is that one must learn about oneself. And we take for granted that simply because we are who we are, we know who we are, and that is not true. It is true that we are who we are. It is not true that we know who we are simply because we are. We must learn who we are. We must learn about our history. We must learn about our thinking. We must learn about our culture, about our thought, and about our wisdom. And we must teach it to our children. And we say that every single day, twice a day, in the Shema Yisrael, Vishinantam lebanecha. Teach it to your children. It was an imperative of our people. And when we do that, we can be in the strangest of places and learn and grow. And that is why, and I will close with this idea, and that is why that during this time we read the story of Joseph. Our readings in synagogue now are the story of Joseph. It is the longest biographical narrative in the Torah. 14 chapters. And who is Joseph? Was Joseph a man who didn't change his clothes or his name or his language? No. Joseph changed all three of those things. He wore Egyptian clothing. He went by an Egyptian name. He spoke the Egyptian language. He, for all intents and purposes, became the face of Egypt. And he stood strong, and we call him the tzaddik, because no matter what it was that he did, he never forgot who he was. He never forgot his family, the teachings of his father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. He held that in his heart always. And that is why we bless our children to be like his. Do we not say, Yisimcha Elohim ke Ephraim Chimnashe? May you make your children like Ephraim and Menashe, the children of Yosef. May they always know who they are, no matter what they wear, no matter what they speak, no matter where they find themselves. Let them learn and embrace. And I will say, perhaps a bit brazenly, but we're here and we are the Sfaradim. And so I'm going to say that that has always been the nature, the way, the custom of the Sfaradim. We modeled ourselves after Yosef. We allowed for ourselves to live in all societies, to embrace all societies, and to engage in that, but not to dissipate. And for those who know, I'll give you an example. I'm sure there are people here who have listened to Kulthum and Abdul Wahab, and who know the beautiful music that was developed in Egypt by those Egyptian artists. And that we in our prayers, not the Spanish and Portuguese prayers, but in the Syrian prayers, and I see there are some Syrians here tonight, in the Syrian prayers, we incorporate their songs into our prayers. Those songs live every day in our prayers. They do not sing them anymore in Cairo. In Cairo, they are considered classical music. Maybe you hear it played every now and then, but it's not popular. And by us, it still lives every single day, because when the nation of Israel, an eternal nation, an indestructible nation, a nation that has passed the tests of time, takes something into their hearts, it lasts. And so there are customs within our people that have been picked up across the eons that still live in us. Our months are still Babylonian named. There are countless words of Greek that are in our language. And there are songs from all cultures and societies within our people. But we are still the people of Israel. And that we must never forget. And that is Chanukah. What Chanukah tells us is, as long as you remember that you are part of the household, no matter where you are in the world, the lighting at home stands for you. And because you will always be part of home. And so it doesn't matter whether you are in Hong Kong and your parents are in Acapulco. If they're lighting for you in Acapulco, you fulfill the obligation, because you are always connected to home. But one must remember that they are connected to home. One must identify that they are part of that home. And when they do, all that needs is to be part of it. And the lighting, lights and stands for all of them. And so on that, I wish everyone a very happy Hanukkah. May God bless all of our families personally and our great big family, the nation of Israel. May we see nahat from all of our children. May we see joy from all that are members of our household and our neighbors and their households and our communities. God bless our community. Say amen to that. God bless our community. And may HaKadosh Baruch Hu give us strength, health, joy, and peace. And may we see, please God, a redemption for our people and good brachot for all of us. Chanukah Sameach.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very, very much, Rabbi Yosef Dweck.
Honor and pleasure. Good
You'll
night.
see tomorrow night we have someone continuing that tradition, what you mentioned in Egypt,
Yes.
with Chazan Chaim Jebri, who will be playing the kanun.
Oh, he's amazing. He's wonderful.
And so he's joining us tomorrow night at 6 o'clock.
Enjoy.
The
Enjoy.
Be'ezrat Hashem should be very nice.
Chanukah Sameach.
Hanukkah Sameach. I'm going to unmute everyone, but beforehand, just to let everyone know, firstly, Shachri tomorrow at 7:30. For the ladies, we have a special history shiur at 11 o'clock. And at 6 o'clock, we have the candle lighting together with a special chazan and a musician, Chaim Jebri, someone who is blind but plays 8 different instruments, and he'll be playing to us the kanun. And on Thursday night, we'll also have the last of the candle lighting, and please God, we'll have a special video message from an Israeli singer called Eli Luzon. Wish everyone happy Hanukkah. I'm just holding a moment. I'm unmuting everyone. Ask them to unmute. And again, thank you so much for Vera, who was able to light for us the candles.
Well, I missed her already.
And Frank and Shelley as well for bringing her.
Chanukah Sameach, everyone.
Chanukah
Joking.
Sameach.
Hi, Dan.
Let me just
Hi, children.
That's
let
Val.
me just
That's
highlight.
Olga. Oh, go
Let me
away.
just- Let's see where is.
Oh, that's other friend.
Hold on. Let me just
Oh, there she
highlight.
is. There's Vera.
Spotlight.
One that lit the candles.
Here it is.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
My
Oh, there's Helena. Oh,
Hi, Sean.
So here's
oh, it's him. Oh, it's that Simeon.
Happy Hanukkah.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Stop, they're giving me a